Hi everyone, today we are back at our permaculture garden, and as currently all over the world we face heat waves, and especially here in Indonesia also we have the El Niño effect, which during the dry season results in almost no rain all the time and temperatures rising up to above 35 degrees. So it's a very challenging time for the garden and for our crops, of course. So today we want to show you how we manage in this situation with our garden and what we do to save our crops as much as possible. Because of the heat waves and the missing rain, the soil is of course extremely dry, and as we cannot water them all the time throughout the day, we need to protect the soil and make sure that the humidity is preserved within the soil. You can see here different examples of our garden beds. Some are of course more exposed to the sun, some less, or some are even in the shadow. And we have also one bed on my left side here which is unprotected because there's no mulch on top of the soil. The reason is because we have here a pest problem with the soil. We need to clean it first before we put new compost inside and add the mulch on top. But what is very interesting, and it's very obviously to see, is that the unprotected bed is the least one growing. And you can also see here the plants are really suffering and they are dried out. While when you go on the other beds, even they have similar conditions from the waterage and from the heat itself or sun exposure, they are much more prosperous at the end. And that's of course due to protecting the soil with mulch. So the question is of course always when is the best time to water our garden. And what we usually do is we do it after sunset, so around 5:30 p.m. or later. Another option would be very early in the morning before sunrise, but that would mean around 5 a.m. So the reason why we do not do it during the day is of course because the earth and the land is just too hot and the water will just evaporate, so that the effect is too little. When we water the plants, we do it always from the bottom, so it's not necessarily the plants actually which needs to be watered, it's the soil which needs to get water, because within the soil is all the whole ecosystem within it, from the animals but also the roots of the plants. They will desire the water. So we try not to water them from top, but always go from the bottom. Important for us will always be to understand what's the soil condition, and that of course means we need to check if the soil is too dry or there's still humidity inside. To check the condition, we usually dig the soil for around 20-30 centimeters, and we check the consistency, the color, and if possible we even look if there's a lot of let's say life around. So here we are digging now the soil, and you can already see on top, of course the soil is very dry. The color already start to change a little bit, getting a little bit darker. But as the water which the plants require is of course they take the water through their roots, and the roots are usually lower for the food crops which we have. That's why we dig around 20-30 centimeters and look what's the condition like. what you can see here, in general the color change a little bit, and when you touch the soil inside you feel there is humidity, so the soil is not dried out totally. And the consistency, of course, in the top part it's very sandy, but when you go down it has a little bit more more packed consistency. So this is an unprotected bed, and this is how the condition of the soil looks like. Let's now check a protected bed where we have mulch coverage on top of it. So here, just to see the other example here, when I already remove the mulsa, you already can see that the color of the soil is much more darker than the one which we just dig out in the unprotected one. So when we're digging inside here, it should be much more better. Yeah, you can see already much darker color, not sandy at all, so much better conditions. So one of the key factors in protecting our soil is of course the mulch, and this is the area where we produce our mulch. So we have a cutting machine and a mulch stock which we can use anytime if necessary or needed. What's important in producing the mulch is the smaller the cuttings are, the better it would be for the soil, because as we also plant our food crops in the beds, we also need them be able to grow. So when there's too many big chunks of mulch, they have difficulties of course to grow because they need to go through them. That's why sometimes we have multiple steps to repeat the cutting to get as small one as possible. Another point is also we use this stock bed to let it dry in case there are some pieces which are not really dried out yet, because they may be still a little bit green, so the mulch itself has also a little bit time to degrade a little bit. Okay, here you see now the freshly cut mulch, and you can see that there's very different kind of sizes and chunks. Some are bigger, some are smaller, and some are even still green, and as you can see some haven't been cut yet. So there will be a second process later where the bigger pieces will cut down in size, and of course everything what green before it is spread over on the beds, it should be dried out like the rest, so it becomes all brown. Okay, so from the different beds which have been protected, the first one here you see called ubi jala in Indonesian. It's a kind of sweet potato, and as it is not only eatable, but it also functions as a cover of the soil. It of course doesn't require too much mulch, because at the end they protect already the soil from the plant itself, from the eatable plant itself. Moving here, we have a mulberry tree, which we planted a few years ago, and it's really growing fast. So looking forward to see the first fruits we can harvest. And then here, this bed is semi-shadow, and the back part is in full shadow. So the front part is here with cucumbers and some pak choy below, while in the back we are having long beans, and again several pak choys and wet spinach. The bed behind is similar. It has also cucumbers. We have here tomatoes, some garlics just growing, celery, as well as leek and red spinach also. Then this bed is again directly on the soil, and the first part here is with aubergines. We have a few of them here, and long beans again at the back. And we have explained it previously that we plant flower plants always within the foodable plants, the eatable plants, because we want the flowers to attract the insects and support in pollination. So then we have here on the left side, we have corn and chilies, which are still in the early phase, growing up. Pak choys as well as lemongrass. Which we also have in the back. And talus. And here is jambuaya tree, so water apple tree, and everything is in ready to be eaten already, because everything, it's now the season. Yeah, so you can see. Okay, now we are at the bigger part of the permaculture garden, which we had been starting just roughly early this year. And yeah, we already see the first results. So we have tomatoes and red spinach here, and because this part of the garden was previously occupied with a building which was demolished, so the soil itself is not in best condition. We work here more with raised beds, so we can control the soil much better. In the front, which is in full sunshine, we have pak choy tomato and Brazilian spinach, and then in the back bed is all the herbs. It's our herb garden with oregano, mint, and rosemary, as well as some pak choys and corn. The mid bed is still not used. We will go out, so it's prepared to be used soon. Here, this bed, the second bed, which is already in use, is in shadow, and we have similar crops: pak choy, tomatoes, chilies and long beans, even Brazilian spinach. Sometimes we plant the same crops in different beds to see their performance in different conditions, so meaning full sun or shadow, and it looks like we cannot judge it now, but from the growth potential, the one which is more in the sun is a bit more prosperous. But let's see how the crop later will be to see really the results. We have a lot of lemongrass around here. Lemongrass also is important to prevent pests or to support our pest control, as there's a lot of pest insects which do not like to be around with lemongrass. Then we have the different trees which are still in the growing phase. We also have of course some problems with pests itself, especially in this dry conditions, because the plants are not so strong. They're a little bit weak because of the weather conditions. So previously this Pawan plant was also suffering from pests, and we use organic pesticides and organic fungicides to try to get rid of the pests, and looking at it now, it looks much better than 2 weeks before. Moving down there, we have an orange tree, still small. And another mulberry tree. And when we compare the condition of this one with the one in the back garden, they were planted at the same time, but the one in the back garden is much bigger. Maybe that has something to do with the soil condition itself, but also that the back garden is not all day around in full sunshine, but it has also some semi-shaded phases. Yeah, that's it for this session of our permaculture coverage. We will see you again next time. Thank you for watching, and bye.